All right, New Zealand has taken the first step in the right direction towards common sense this week as a bill that sets to define men and women as a biological male and biological female has passed its first reading. And as you can imagine, there's been a range of reactions to this. We're going to take a look at a few of them today from Winston Peters, David Seymour and Chloe Swarbrick. Chloe's speech from inside Parliament was just rife with contradictions and red herrings, and her response outside Parliament wasn't much better. But people like her just need to get to grips with the fact that there's a shrinking minority of people in New Zealand that are still willing to be captured by this trans ideology. Despite in her speech claiming that there's just millions of people in New Zealand and billions around the world that are just oh so tired about having to have these irrelevant conversations about basic biological truths. She'd much rather get back to blaming the world's issues on the rich and trying to implement socialism. She also claimed that this government wouldn't give women the right to vote if they had the choice today, which is an amazing point to make when she is unwilling to give a coherent definition of what a woman is. So who exactly are you giving the right to vote to? I suppose in her world it wouldn't really be needed to be given because a man and a woman can just identify as each other for the day and all is well. But back in the real world, there is simply no end to this madness and the contradictions that we are now living in. And so this is why in 2026 a debate like this needs to be had in the first place. Because we just simply need to agree in law, something that even a preschooler knows. So here we are debating the existence of gravity. And no, Chloe, gravity isn't whatever it wants to be. So let's take a look at some of our favorite politicians and their reactions to this bill. All right, so the bill has passed its first reading because of party support from National ACT and New Zealand First, but this is what Chloe had to say. This is her tolerant response towards the National Party in particular for their support of the bill.
Why do you think they're now making the decision to support it?
Because they're cowards. Yeah, let's be really clear. Trans people are not the reason that New Zealanders can't afford their groceries. Trans people are not the reason that New Zealanders cannot afford their power bills.
Nobody is saying this. I don't know where she's getting this type of thing from. She acts as if there's this opportunity cost where if Parliament could just focus solely on fixing our economic issues and not have to worry about anything else like this basic bill of defining male and female to try and protect young girls and women to keep them safe in women's spaces, well then we could just create the socialist utopia and we'd all just be thriving. And I don't understand why she presents this straw man as if anyone believes this. It's bizarre, really.
Trans people are not the reason that New Zealanders are experiencing record high unemployment. All of those issues fall at the feet of this government, and I think it is absolutely despicable, but unfortunately not surprising, that this government has once again decided to paint a target on the back of a minority.
Trying to protect girls and young women, giving them their own safe spaces in sports and changing rooms and women's refuges, other places where women need to be safe. And we need to know who are men and who are women. As we're seeing more and more overseas, has to be the case. We have to know these differences to protect women. You can do that and not be painting a target on the back of a minority. It's just, again, these things are not connected in any way. The economy is not connected to this issue, and painting a target on someone's back is not connected to protecting young girls and women. It's simply not. It's unrelated.
It's in the past sort of ridiculed bills such as this. Why do you think they're now making the decision to support it?
Because they're cowards.
Cowards. You know, I called Chloe a coward earlier this year, and for a very particular reason, because she was unwilling to call out the slaughter of tens of thousands of Iranian people when their evil government were literally gunning them down on the streets. And then as soon as America goes in and starts firing some missiles at terrorists, well, then she's up in arms about it. That type of hypocrisy. And by the way, the lying that she's doing in this particular issue, where she's pretending not to know the difference between men and women, and other people like her that are simply lying, that's what makes you a coward. Hypocrisy makes you a coward, and lying makes you a coward because you are unwilling to speak the truth. And so all those that are speaking the truth are not cowards, quite far from it. So unfortunately, Chloe, you've completely missed the whole point of this debate, and you're not tricking or fooling anybody by your straw man arguments. So let's move on to the next one. All right, here's Winston Peters doing what he does best, which is racking up the media as they ask him questions about this bill.
But what is your definition?
Adult, human, female.
And why do you think that's so controversial?
Well, it's not controversial. They just passed the same law in the UK. They understand common sense. And here we are here, way behind the times, and I'm just correcting things.
Do you think this should be a priority for the government, though, and for politicians to look into?
Yeah.
Notice how she has a similar reaction to Chloe, where she basically says, we don't have time for this. Let's not waste our politicians' energy on this particular subject, because she knows she can't engage with the debate itself. And so she needs to say, hey, let's not focus on this. Let's just pretend like it's not really that important. But obviously Winston's not buying it.
I think it is a priority when people are walking into women's dressing sheds and all sorts of things and they're not females. I think it is a priority. You might not think so, but out there in the real world they do.
Exactly. Kiwis actually care about this, which if she paid attention to the stats and the data, she would realise.
And I might just say that all the polls show that there's a huge movement towards this as well. Did you see the latest poll on it?
No, can you inform me about the latest poll?
No, then go and find it yourself.
Will this law change?
I'm not an information service.
Look how out of touch she is with the average Kiwi and what they actually believe on this issue. Of course, inside those media bubbles of ideology, then it seems like everybody agrees, but that's not actually the case amongst the average Kiwi, and the data and the studies are showing that.
Will this law change the situation around bathrooms, though, isn't it?
Yes, it will eventually. Of course, they'll start following some common sense. This controversy started with the swimming pool down there in Southland, you remember, in Invercargill.
It really is the foundation. Winston's right, this has to be in law as a basic foundation. It's a starting point as to acknowledge the biological reality of male and female. We have to start somewhere. This is an important place to start.
Well, those years ago, we decided this was outrage.
Mr. Pierce, how would that be policed, though? How would you stop anybody from walking into another person's bathroom?
Oh, for goodness sake. There are bathrooms now where men can't walk in. They've been policed all those darn years until a new group decided they weren't going to do anything about it. I'm sorry, this is not a problem either.
In terms of inserting the definitions into the Legislation Act, what difference is that going to make to New Zealanders and how they have to live their life?
Well, if you're not concerned about men going into girls' bathrooms or women's bathrooms or toilets, then I am. And and what this bill demonstrates in your response is just how out of touch the mainstream media are with the New Zealand people.
He's not wrong.
For God's sake, you can see why nobody's reading this stuff anymore.
But what in this bill is going to mean that a man can't go into a woman's bathroom, and it's just defining that, and what role is that going to play?
I beg your pardon? Don't you realise the reason why the Scottish nationalist leader lost her job in the end? Because somebody went in there and murdered a woman in one of the toilets, right? Do you remember that? That's how price it cost them in Scotland. And you say it's of no moment here? You astonish me.
So you think having it in legislation will clarify it for the public?
Well, it'll clarify it, and then the law enforcement will accompany that. And so you'll see the things corrected. But to have young girls not going to bathrooms because they fear what men who shouldn't be there being there is simply wrong.
It is the foundation to protecting women and young girls, because it is the foundation of what we're going to look to when criminal cases do arise or when disputes arise, and we need to say, hey, does this biological man deserve to be in this place at this time amongst young girls, whether it's sport, changing rooms, social media apps, for example, ring any bells? This is the type of legislation that we need so that we can actually look at definitions. If you understand the law, you understand that definitions are crucial to understanding and interpreting the law and applying the law to our everyday lives. We shouldn't need to have this clarified. We do because of our modern times. This is what we're doing now. All right, and here is David Seymour with his interactions with the media in regards to the bill.
The definition of a woman bill, ACT is supporting it to Select Committee. Can you run us through your thinking behind that?
Yeah, look, I'm frankly just sick of pretending. There are two biological sexes. People don't have to believe that, but they don't have the right to tell other people they're not allowed to say it. I hear these expressions like chest feeding. That is a denial of basic biological reality. It's called breastfeeding because we're mammals, because the female of the species have mammary glands which convert glucose to lactose, which is food for infants. We know all this stuff. That's why it's called breastfeeding.
Groundbreaking information in the Parliament.
We don't need to kid ourselves or be suppressed from being able to say basic things that we can see.
People are sick of pretending, and I'll show you next some stats that have recently done here in New Zealand as to just where the public is on this topic and just how far away they are from the media and some of our woke politicians.
Lie because they feel that they'll offend somebody else. This is a statement that I think a lot of people have been waiting for a long time.
Does Parliament have any business deciding what people believe about this?
Parliament have business in putting reality and truth into law so that the society can function based on that truth and that reality. That's what Parliament's supposed to do. That's what good government is supposed to do. As David said, if people want to be delusional and people want to go and act out in the world in a way that is not congruent with reality, well, that's on them, up and until it interacts with other people who are trying to go about their lives in the real world and in accordance with reality. And then truth trumps over top of lies.
Said that you should believe in them, or do you believe in them because they're part of your core liberty?
Oh, there's a lot of things I believe. Like, for example, if you look at the Crimes Act, I think those things are right. Would I believe those things if Parliament hadn't passed the Crimes Act? Maybe. But certainly part of my belief and culture in my life is that I think what the democratic Parliament decides is something I should at least pay attention to.
This is actually a fascinating philosophical question that the journalist has intentionally or unintentionally asked David, and he's gone some way to acknowledging the fact that actually Parliament don't have the ability to dictate what is evil and what is good. It has the ability to identify what is evil and what is good and bring those things into law, but it doesn't have the ability to dictate those things. It doesn't have the ability to bring something into existence and change objective morality. And so it's a little bit confusing when this journalist is asking a question who I would imagine has some version of subjective morality in his worldview, and he's trying to trap David into asking him, hey, do you just trust everything that Parliament says? Is that where you get good and evil from? Well, my question to him would be, where do you get good or evil from? What standard do you base what is good, what is evil, and what is true? Because is it yourself? Because David doesn't have that right, that journalist doesn't have that right, not even Parliament has that right. We acknowledge good, we acknowledge evil, and we acknowledge reality. We do not create it.
Now, I happen to be a person who spent half their life running for Parliament, so I can change those rules, but that's not because I don't think some of them are wrong. It's because actually I think it's important that we get them right.
Why is Parliament going back?
Right, based on what standard? Based on his opinion?
ACT supported the self-ID legislation. Do you still back that? And would this legislation change anything that enables?
A whole lot of people backed that legislation, but frankly, I think it's one thing to be respectful and understanding of somebody who identifies as trans. They want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But this is about the rest of us being able to see things and say things and hold our beliefs, think our thoughts and speak our mind without having to confect ourselves into these riddles.
It's based on us not being forced to lie. It's based on us being able to acknowledge truth and, more importantly, protect those that are vulnerable from the lies that are getting pushed into our culture.
As we've been forced to do with pregnant people and chest feeding, all that rubbish.
All right, so you've seen what some of our members of Parliament think about this law, but what are Kiwis saying? What is the average New Zealander saying about the need for having men and women defined in law? Well, 51% are in support of such a law, 19% oppose. So only less than 1/5 of people oppose this type of bill being put into law. Remember, Chloe's saying it's millions and millions of people very tired of having to have these types of conversations. Well, clearly untrue. What is interesting, however, is that there is still 30% of people that are unsure what they think about such a bill. And I think this doesn't prove that 30% of people in New Zealand don't know what a woman is. I think it proves that this trans ideology movement has been so effective in silencing and filling the average Kiwi with fear around this type of subject that they don't even want to speak the truth about it. And so that 30% of people that are unsure, well, they just need to continue to grow in their boldness, in their bravery, and in their confidence to speak truth and reality. So there you go. As I say, a step in the right direction. The first reading passed and a slight majority of Kiwis in support of the bill. Now it's time for the Greens and Labour to get on board with the average Kiwi in supporting and protecting women. And you cannot protect something that you cannot define. There is still, of course, work to be done because the Minister for Women still seems confused as to what exactly she's the Minister of. But I'm hopeful that the 30% of Kiwis that are supposedly still unsure of what a woman is, or at least the need to put that definition into law, will grow in their boldness as others are brave enough to speak the truth despite the risk, of course, of being called a coward, a bully, bigoted, or hateful. And then we may even get basic biological reality passed into law. And then it'll be there ready to be deployed to protect women when the situation arises. So be ready for when you get the chance to do this as the bill goes to the Select Committee. Have your say and remind the government of the existence of gravity and its importance for keeping everybody's heads out of the clouds.